Today, I want to go over some 5 players here, 2 hitters, 3 pitchers who had relatively good careers that are mostly forgotten to history unless you were fans of those players. Most of them do not have accolades per se. Some do. But let's jump into this with the first one. Taking a look first at Mark Kotsay. Today, I think he still is the Oakland A's or the Sacramento A's or whatever they're going to be here shortly. Manager. I think he just signed an extension this offseason with them. For his 17-year career, he had a 21.3 WAR, and he primarily played outfield and first base basically throughout his whole career. While not relatively being a known hitter per se, he did have 1 year in 2004 with the A's where he did have 15 home runs, had 63 RBIs, and batted .314 with a .370 on base and a .459 slugging. He did, like I said, finished 14th in the MVP race. But for a career, relatively solid. Like I said, I think he's kind of forgotten because he was more of a journeyman piece than anything else. For his career, he had 127 homers, had 720 RBIs, stole just shy of 100 bases, and had an OBP of .332 with a .404 slugging and a batting average of .276. Next up, a pitcher who I remember like MLB 05 and 06 the show, always drafting in my franchise modes and fantasy draft. I was very partial to him, who wasn't necessarily good at the beginning of his career or the end, but really hit that sweet spot from 2000 to 2005. With the Minnesota Twins especially, and then a couple years with the Seattle Mariners. But that is Eddie Guardado. He was a left-handed closer, which didn't see a whole lot of back in the day, at least when I grew up, especially playing those games. But for career stats, he had a 13.2 WAR. He had 46 wins, 61 losses, and a 4.31 ERA, which doesn't sound great, but we're going to go over a couple of years in this stretch there in that time frame to kind of offset that number. He did pitch in 908 games. He did start his career as a starter, but failed miserably there before moving to the bullpen, and he managed to rack up 187 saves, all of it, like I said, coming in like that 6-year stretch. So in those 6 years, from 2000 through 2006, this was his ERAs. He had a 3.94, a 3.51, a 2.93, a 2.89, a 2.78, a 2.72, and a 3.89. Now, those aren't insane numbers by any means, but that is the end of the steroid era, if you remember. And in that time frame, he also racked up this for saves. In 2000, he had 9. Then he had 12, 45, which led the league, 41, 18, 36. Like I said, he had a great stretch there where he was very consistent. He had 2 All-Star appearances in 2002 and 2003, and even got the 15th place in the AL MVP voting. Not a Hall of Famer by any means, not even that great, but he had a really good 6-year stretch there. Up third, one of my favorite players back in MLB 07 to take in my fantasy drafts, just because he was, 06, 07, that time frame, was a guy that I remember just being really good and really consistent. But when I look back at his stats, he was what I'd call a contract year darling. He basically had 2 really good years that far away and surpassed anything. He came up in 97 with the Braves, a part of that great rotation, had 2 decent seasons, and then in 1999, he went on to put up a 2.68 ERA, where he was an all-star, a Cy Young, where he finished 3rd and got 26th in MVP voting. He led the league in WHIP with a sub-1 WHIP as a starter, where he went 18-7. And he did throw 2 complete games. He also pitched 228 innings in that season. But for the most of his career, he was rather lackluster. In 05, he had another great season with the Cleveland Indians, where he went 9-11 and threw a 2.86 ERA season, over 192 innings. Like I said, he had a really good year. He necessarily didn't have the wins to show for it, but he was a very solid pitcher. And over his career, he had a 29.8 ERA WAR, He had 169 wins, 152 losses, hit a 4.11 ERA. So he was very much just like that third, fourth starter in your rotation who would go out there and give you solid starts, but he'd also get shelled. And finished his career with a 1.328 ERA, or a whip, sorry. But yeah, he was really good. He bounced a lot around quite a bit after Atlanta. I personally remember him from his Texas days. That's kind of when I grew up basically playing MLB The Show from 05 through 2010. Like I said, not a great pitcher by any means, but he was very solid and very consistent, especially when Smoltz went down in 2000. He kind of was supposed to be the guy that step up and kind of replace him in the rotation, and he did kind of fall short that year. Fourth on my list is Troy Percival. Many of you probably don't know who Troy Percival is. I personally know him mostly from, I think it was Triple Play 98 or 99, as being the closer for the Los Angeles or Anaheim Angels back then. Mostly because I think he only had a fastball. That was the only pitch he threw in that game. And I just remember it bothered the ever-living hell out of me because I was somebody who wanted a pitcher back in those days who threw 5 pitches, 4 pitches, whatever. Well, the max was back in the PlayStation 1 era. But he was a very good pitcher and oftentimes kind of forgotten because the person who took over for him in Los Angeles would be K-Rod, who went on to have a much better career than he did. And that's saying a lot considering the fact that Troy Percival had a very solid 14-year career where he had a 17 WAR, was 35-43 with a 3.17 ERA. He also saved 358 games. He did have a World Series ring with the Anaheim Angels. I think it was, 03? I'm going to probably butcher that. But yeah, he was a 4-time All-Star. He was 4th in the Rookie Year voting in 1995. And he also finished 15th in the MVP voting in 2002. 2002 was the year that they won the World Series. That was the year because 03 was the Marlins. And then 04, 04 was the White Sox. So he had a really good stretch there throughout his career. He basically was a consistent 30 to 40 saves a season guy, constantly in the twos for a good part of his career. I kind of felt like he got hit quite a lot for home runs through 9. Yeah, he gave up like a 1 to 1.5 in that range. But he was a really good closer, consistent, and kind of somebody that we forget about. He did end his career with the 09 Tampa Bay Rays, who'd go in the World Series, but he was kind of lackluster there. I think he did pretty well in the playoffs, though, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong on that. Last on my list here is Russell Brand, a.k.a. Russell the Muscle, and this is what I would call a Adam Dunn clone who really would fit better in today's game than he did back in the 2000s. He was literally the definition of a bat, and he could not field. He'd be a great DH for anybody he played with. For his career, he had 11.2 WAR, which doesn't sound great, but he's literally a liability at the hot corner at third base most of the time. He did play some first base. But yeah, like I said, 11.2 WAR, 194 homers, a 232 batting average, and he did drive in 467 runs. But his OPS plus was 113, which doesn't sound great, but like I said, he bounced around a lot. He played for, I don't know, almost every team it seems like. Yeah, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Seattle, Cincinnati, San Diego, Tampa Bay, LA Angels, Arizona, St. Louis, Philadelphia. Like, he played for a lot of teams. And while his best years were with Milwaukee and Seattle, which is funny because Seattle's not a hitter's park. This is right after they had built that stadium, I think in 2008 or something like that, after spending time with Milwaukee, because I think he was part of the original Richie Sexson trade or something like that. Let's see, I can check that real quick. No, he was not a part of that Richie Sexson trade. He was an afterthought on that. But he had a very solid career, and I think if he played in today's major leagues, he'd be more of, it's not a great comparison, but I'd say what Giancarlo Stanton is now. I don't think he'd be quite the power hitter that Giancarlo is, but that's kind of where he would be. Like I said, he's an Adam Dunn mold kind of guy. Would have been way more successful had he played just DH and nothing else. All right, that's going to wrap up this video on 5 players who kind of had good careers but are kind of forgotten. This is kind of the idea behind what my channel was supposed to be, but then I kind of turned it into like a documentary almost form. We'll see how this goes. If people do enjoy this and really like watching this, we will continue maybe to do this from time to time. And if I find players that I really like, I will do full videos on. I've kind of taken a hiatus on uploading due to some different reasons, mental health, and I love baseball, but it's not my passion. My passion is actually history, and I've been contemplating just turning this channel into a pure history channel. But I don't know if I want to do 45-minute long videos. So there's that. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.